Peacemaker Season 2 wrapped up last night, and based on everything that I have seen since the finale aired, is that many fans are kind of 50-50 on how they felt about it. There are plenty of fans that seem to really like it, but there are plenty of fans that also felt like there was a lot of buildup for essentially nothing. Now, to get my quick thoughts on the season out the way, I really did like Season 2, and the finale, I wasn't crazy about it, but I didn't think it was garbage either. I think the things that it highlighted, being the characters and the relationships, I think it worked extremely well. My only issue is it was very muddy in its execution with everything else that was going on, everything else that the season kind of built up towards. I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I don't want to spoil anything yet. Obviously, a little bit later in the video, I will be spoiling some things that happened in Peacemaker Season 2 because I want to explain how it connects to Man of Tomorrow, or how I think it's going to connect to Man of Tomorrow. But just so you know, I'm not spoiling anything yet. I'll make a warning for that. But yeah, it was just a little bit muddy in its execution. I think it kind of lost focus on some things that I could have spent a little bit more time on. But overall, it was solid, and Season 2 of Peacemaker was really good. But I do think, understandably, what has gotten people so disappointed with how it ended was honestly what James Gunn was saying about it. Now listen, I've made no secret here. I am loving what James Gunn has been doing with the DCU so far. I thought Creature Commandos was great. I thought Superman was great. And I think Peacemaker Season 2 was very good. As far as I'm concerned, the guy just has not missed. He's done an excellent job so far with this new DCU. What I'm referring to is this right here. Again, this was said back in August, over a month ago. He was basically hyping this thing up like crazy, saying like the last 3 episodes, he wasn't telling anybody. He wasn't showing anybody what was going on because there were so many crazy spoilers, so much going on. It was, the craziest stuff, his favorite things that he's ever done, which is great for him. I'm glad that, these last episodes of Peacemaker really meant something to him. That's awesome. But when you say something like this as your show is ongoing, it does get a lot of people talking, and naturally does set some very high expectations. Now, I'm not going to say that those expectations weren't entirely met or weren't close to being met. I mean, listen, episode 6 and 7 were great. In fact, I guess now that's probably where I should say I'm going to get into spoilers, because I mean, I can't really talk about it without talking about what happens, and then of course how it connects to Man of Tomorrow. So there it is. Here's your spoiler warning. I'm going to get into spoilers. But yeah, episode 6 and 7 is when Chris is in that other dimension, and that's when we end up finding out that this new dimension that Chris is like so enamored with, how his life is seemingly perfect. He has his dad and his brother alive. He's fighting crime with them. He's super happy. He's got the girl he's always wanted, Harcourt and all that kind of stuff. He ends up finding out that, yeah, it's a world ruled by Nazis. And how that reveal was done was actually really great, really captivating, and very engaging. Episode 7 is, carries a lot of that momentum. That's where that universe's version of his brother and his dad find out that he's not actually the Chris, that they were like, that they actually like had in their dimension. And then they end up going through this big fight. Chris ends up killing them. Like it's this whole thing. But then we get to the finale, episode 8, and it does kind of open up a door for a lot of different things. Number one, Chris's relationship with Harcourt, how, we finally find out the boat story of what happened with them. We see it, they're at this concert, and this is what I was saying earlier, like, man, those concert scenes were way too long. Like, they were basically music videos at that point. The second band being the same band that plays the song that's the opening song to the season 2 theme, and it's really cool to see that it's Harcourt's like favorite band. She's like jamming out to the song, but again, I think it spent way too much time with both concerts, if I'm being honest. And the reason that the finale feels so jumbled is because there's so much different things going on where not enough time is really spent on any of it except for Peacemaker and his gang. We see in the beginning of the episode that Rick Flag is like having his team Argus go through these different dimensions, seeing different things, trying to see trying to find out what's the best dimension for something. We don't know what he's looking for just yet. He's looking for something. And after a bunch of trial and errors, they end up finding this dimension that seems very, very normal. Doesn't look or feel anything different than planet Earth. During all of that, Peacemaker is in jail, and he is coming to terms with the fact that he thinks that he is the problem in every connection and relationship that he has, because someone ends up dying. He truly believes that he's actually a curse, a walking, living, breathing curse on everybody. And it is actually very emotional stuff. John Cena is just a great actor, man. Like, he did a terrific job with this season. His gang ends up paying the bail for him to get out of jail with all the money that Vigilante has in his basement. And then essentially they're in Chris's motel room where they have this big conversation about how Chris is super important and how much he means to them in their lives. It's a very great scene with some terrific acting from Adebayo and her whatever her actress's name. I'm forgetting her name right now, but whoever plays Adebayo, She was fantastic. And then, yeah, then it just kind of rushes into the gang being together, Harcourt, Peacemaker being a thing, and they end up, creating this new organization called Checkmate, which was, again, really nice. I was not expecting that whatsoever. I didn't expect Peacemaker to have his own crime-fighting organization, away from Argus and the government, all that kind of stuff, not even the Justice Gang. But that's when we get to the real ending of the finale, the real ending of Peacemaker Season 2. Rick Flag ends up capturing Peacemaker, throws him in that dimension that seemingly looks very normal. The dimension itself, Rick Flag is calling Salvation. And yes, Salvation is in some of the comics. I haven't actually read them myself, but I do know that it's a thing. He ends up shoving Peacemaker in this dimension, saying like, this is for Ricky. This is for his son that got killed in the Suicide Squad movie. Then he ends up closing the portal, and Peacemaker is stuck in Salvation, and you hear like a bunch of ghoulish monster things like out like in the distance. Like you hear some monsters out there, so he's obviously not alone. It's obviously not a super safe place. Okay, so now that we got all that out of the way, how does that connect to Man of Tomorrow? Well, James Gunn actually did talk about it a little bit. He actually ended up going on Threads to answer the fans' question, which is, again, how does it set up Man of Tomorrow? Because he was confused. I'm sure some others were too. He says, where Chris is at the end, what is happening between the government and the metahumans, Rick and Lex's new partnership, and all of their decisions to do what they did is all part of the future Man of Tomorrow and more. Which, again, in a very vague and loose way, it does make sense. Lex and Rick Flag are now working together. You see his goons for the last couple of episodes, helping him go through these different dimensions thanks to Lex and his intellect. This is obviously setting up a situation where not just, Peacemaker's in there, but there's going to be a lot of metahumans that are going to be ending up getting put into Salvation, probably including Superman. And it at least does tie in a little bit to the Superman movie as well. It does actually make some continual sense here, because near the end of Superman, there's that scene with Rick Flag and that government guy, and they're basically saying like, oh, well, metahumans run the world now. We have a problem. Metahumans are everywhere. So now Salvation might end up being a place where, metahumans are being forced into. Maybe some of them don't go willingly. That might be an entire thing that ends up happening in Man of Tomorrow. But again, I just go back to that quote that James Gunn had, back in August, the one that I showed earlier about him, being so hyped about these last 3 episodes. And if that was really it, it just kind of feels a little bit overhyped. I think he was kind of talking it up to be something way more than what it actually was. Don't get me wrong. The cliffhanger is cool on its own, having Peacemaker end with him in that different dimension entirely and, not really knowing how he gets out of it, where the case may be. But at the end of the day, he did kind of make it out to be like there was going to be a lot of crazy stuff going on, and that just ended up being the only crazy thing going on. Plus, that wasn't the only thing he said. He also said back in August there was going to be some really big stars from the DCU that are going to be near the end of the season, to which there wasn't. There wasn't any big stars from the DCU near the end. It was just Peacemaker, his gang, Argus, and a couple of Lex's goons. What did this even mean? No offense to him or anything, but it does feel a little intentionally misleading because, again, we saw the last 3 episodes and there were no big crazy cameos of anyone in the DCU's bigger picture. It was just the regular gang. Him overstating how, Peacemaker Season 2 connects to the larger DCU and into Man of Tomorrow, which is going to be a big movie no matter what. And then you think about all the other DC projects coming out before that, like Lanterns, like Supergirl. I think even Clayface is coming out before Man of Tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. It's just going to be really interesting to see how it all kind of ties together within those different DCU projects heading into Man of Tomorrow, because as you know, Man of Tomorrow is a big Superman movie. It's not technically Superman 2. James Gunn was saying repeatedly that that's not going to be it, so it's not the direct sequel or like an actual sequel to Superman, but it is a Superman movie nonetheless. But yeah, just to put a bow on it, I wasn't crazy about the Season 2 finale, but I still think that Peacemaker Season 2 was very, very good, and I'm super excited to see what happens next with the DCU, because so far, it just hasn't missed. James Gunn has been on a roll. Please let me know in the comments what you thought about the season. If you're excited for Man of Tomorrow, how everything connects, let's talk about it in the comments. And until next time, peace.